Man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious. Masses are always breeding grounds of psychic epidemics. What, you don't believe me? You don't think that everybody has the power to control hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of people's minds? Then let's do a little experiment, shall we? I'll show you how mind control can work. So, wherever in the world you are right now as you're hearing this, I order you to think of the Eiffel Tower on a rainy evening being struck by lightning. Okay? Thinking about that image? Right. Now, try to stop thinking about the Eiffel Tower on a rainy evening being struck by lightning. That essentially is an example of mind control. I planted an image and a situation in your mind, and it was there. And even when you tried to stop thinking about it, some of you would have still had that image. You see, it's easy to implant ideas and images onto another person's brain. Now, imagine that I did that little experiment on a worldwide audience. Say either TV or internet, let's say 1 or 2 billion people. And imagine too that instead of my innocent Eiffel Tower image, I ordered you to watch and think about something far more powerful, like the World Trade Center imploding, or Osama bin Laden firing his machine gun at some unseen target, or Prince William's wedding as he's groomed to become the once and future king. So what are the effects and perils of making hundreds of millions, even billions of people see and hear exactly the same thing at exactly the same time all over the world? And that's repeated time and time again. What, if any, is the aggregated effect on the collective psyche, on physical brains, and even on the physical world of all that psychic energy? Can the collective psyche unwittingly precipitate physical events? And now, thanks to worldwide TV, radio and the internet, these collective effects are unprecedented in history. We are treading unexplored territory. We just don't know whether or not such effects exist, whether we might be opening a veritable Pandora's box by tapping into deep recesses of the collective psyche. And even more, is it possible that this aggregated effect generated by untold hundreds of millions of human brains could be consciously tapped by unseen controllers to generate certain effects, phenomena, or circumstances that fit their agendas? Could such a subtle effect be used to materialize ideas and events, and thus used to influence worldly matters? If it should someday be discovered that these phenomena do exist, and that the powers that should not be, think tanks, Tavistock Institute allied with the CIA, MI6 and others, harness such unconscious collective psychic energies for their own ends and purposes, using masses of human beings everywhere, well, at least everywhere there's TV and internet, to physically materialise their objectives, then we really ought to investigate this sooner rather than later. What an irony if they were to use our own minds against ourselves to enslave us to their objectives and needs. In other words, can the collective psyche be harnessed to mislead man and womankind onto paths of social, political, cultural, economic and intellectual destruction? A lot of this is happening today, as any student of PsyOps and Psy-War well knows. The upper echelons of power often interact and communicate through a totally different system of symbolic language that, when properly understood, lends credence to Illuminati tradition and the impact of Freemasonic orders. Don't be fooled, they're not just playing around with signs and symbols or words of power and dates. They know only too well the intrinsic power of Kabbalistic numbers, for example, and use them in many of their tricks of the trade.
No way, I work with numbers myself. I mean, not traditional. I work with the Torah. Amazing! You know, Hebrew's all math. It's all numbers. You know that? Yeah, look. The ancient Jews used Hebrew as their numerical system, right? Each letter's a number. Like your Hebrew A, Aleph, 1. B, Bet, 2. Understand?
They function as did spies of old, who would send instructions to their covert agents in a foreign land by publishing some small ad in the classified section of a local newspaper, right out in the open, innocent and innocuous, and yet so important. With hindsight, we now realise the numerous telltale signs from Hollywood that 9/11 was being planned, and that somehow it had to be communicated to the friends in the know. There we have it in plain sight in the City of New York vs Simpsons episode aired on the 21st of September 1997. America's favourite family decides to visit the World Trade Center after Bart and Lisa show a brochure saying 911. Or the 1997 movie The Matrix, when Neo is arrested, his passport expiry date is the 11th of September 2001. Were these warnings? Clearly, behind most innocent looking things there are signs to be read, and to understand what's happening today is like driving on a road from one town to another. You need to understand and properly interpret a whole host of signs, warning and notices telling you where to exit, where to step on the accelerator and when to brake. We would do well to understand such signs and have the proper maps, or better still, our own PSYOPS GPS to find our way. The human psyche has very deep archaic recesses where powerful dormant forces wait to be awakened. The collective unconscious, about which Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung spoke, is a powerful source of archaic, collectively inherited psychic tendencies embedded in man and rooted in the very fabric of the cosmos. Jung called them archetypes, that, when channeled in specific directions, may unleash the psychic epidemics he warned us about. In fact, on May 30th, 1961, just 8 days before he died, Jung dictated to his daughter his last visions. He said, "I see enormous stretches devastated, enormous stretches of the earth, but thank God, not the whole planet." And Jung made a drawing with the caption under it that said, "The last 50 years of humanity." That points exactly to our time. The power elites know this only too well and make good use of it, which might explain why Jung's psychology is much less publicly talked about than the elite's favourite son, Sigmund Freud. Freud thought of the subconscious as basically a trash can of repressed personal traumas. Jung thought of the unconscious as superior to the conscious mind and held that it was governed by inherited psychic tendencies. Freud thought his laws of psychology were universally valid. Jung believed that every race or ethnic group had blatantly obvious psychological difference. So it's high time we too woke up to the not so hidden signs being used to unleash psychic tsunamis on us, taking advantage of these unconscious energies, perhaps to even create self-fulfilling prophecies. The elites do have an Achilles heel. They need you to be a willing accomplice. They need you to be passive. They need to buy your acceptance to do what they want you to do. They need you to sell your soul to them. Literally, they need you to sign a virtual contract in which you say, yes, I will obey your feudal elite overlords if you will allow me to live and enjoy rights. Now, this truth is as old as mankind. In the play Faust, we are shown a knowledge-thirsty, over-intellectualized professor signing a blood contract with the devil himself in exchange for the minor glories of worldly fame and shine. Now, have you ever asked yourself, why should the devil need anybody to sign a contract with him? It would appear that the powers of darkness, the forces of evil, need you to serve them of your own free will. It seems there's a cosmic rule that even the old man devil himself cannot override, which says that his victims must serve him of their own free will. That is the elite's Achilles heel that we must exploit to the utmost. I opened up this video talking about how collective psychic energy can be harnessed for matters pertaining to this world. I'd like now to examine a more out there view of how subtle forces of darkness may also be harnessing collective psychic energies to achieve their ends beyond this world. Those of you that have read the Tibetan Book of the Dead know that when we depart this world, a subtle part of us, mind, the psychic personality residue, remains for a while. It is suddenly left, however, without a physical brain and the senses to support it. There are indications that psychic residue may continue to guide soul onto the next incarnation as we experience in the beyond through the mental body, the car of the Egyptians. However, it has no control over the physical world as we had when our live brains controlled our feet, mouth, hands interacting with the world, i.e. do this and do that. When we die, we no longer have physical organs. However, our soul's journey beyond, the car, still continues to project ideas and concepts, and here lies a possible danger. When we are incarnate, mental projections are kept at bay because our trustworthy senses immediately kick in with their logic to filter out or buffer and separate what we can from what we cannot be. So, even if the mind imagines a pink elephant floating past my window, I will not actually see nor experience that because my eye-brain senses kick in and say, that's impossible. So let's do another simple experiment. Imagine that on a sunny day in a bar full of people, I told you, think about being all alone in a cemetery with crypts opening and walking dead coming at you. You'd probably just laugh at me because there's no way you could even project such a preposterous image. Now, imagine I say exactly the same words whilst we are both alone at midnight on a moonless night inside a real cemetery. Your eyes cannot see, but your mind's eye certainly conjures up all sorts of horrific images. Worse still, your ears are pricked. What was that rushing sound? Did I hear a sinister whisper? What was that shadow I caught with the corner of my eye? By now, many people would start going into full panic mode. Why? Because when it's dark and silent, our senses offer little protection against mental projections of the most horrible images. That's when you regret having seen such a terrible movie and those images now come back to haunt you. And when you start having doubts about what may really be out there in the shadows at night, which are a symbol of the deepest recesses of your own psyche. Well, some say when we die it gets even worse than that. for we no longer have eyes and ears, and a brain to sort out and organise what we see and hear. It would seem that whatever we project in the beyond becomes real, at least psychologically real. Now, I'm fairly certain that some of the folks running Hollywood know this.
Thank you to Satan for giving me inspiration on how to play this role.
And the fact that they've overloaded our brains with the most horrific images and fears may serve the purpose of sending us all, literally, to hell. Because in the beyond, if in life you were scared of hornets, you'll project real hornets. If you were scared of Walking Dead, you'll project zombies. And if the movie Aliens really made you jump from your seat, well, by the same token, if we cherished and believed in Christ and the Blessed Virgin, they will greet us when we die. Same if you believe in Allah, and departed mum and dad and your long lost dog will be projected too. Actually, initial projections are from the heart, and they're always beautiful and warm, but as the after-death intermediate state, Bardu, progresses, projections from the mind begin. That's when the soul can run into trouble. So maybe the powers that should not be are aiming at controlling us here and in the hereafter. Why? I don't really know. Maybe it's part of their satanic ritual whereby they must feed their ghoulish gods. Beelzebub, Satan, Yahweh, Baphomet, Allah and other such bloodthirsty, soul-thirsty cosmic rules. The essence of blood on this side of reality has its counterpart in psychic energy in the beyond. The rules of the game are there for us all to see. Don't deliver up your mind and your soul. Don't be a passive collaborator, because doing nothing is exactly what the powers that shouldn't be want from you. Passive collaboration. Biblical tradition says that Lucifer shouted his rebellion to high heaven, yelling, "Non serviam," I will not serve. Isn't it a strange, uncanny twist of fate that it's now our duty to turn the table back on the evil ones and shout back at them, "I will not serve."